Welcome everybody to a Tilt webinar with Julia Morris, Language Learning with ChatGPT, exploring the opportunities and the risks. Today is Tuesday, the 21st of February. Julia will be speaking to us for about an hour, and that will be followed by a show and tell led by the great Joe Dale. I'm Helen Myers. I'm chair of the ALL London branch. We always thank Linguiscope for their support in our webinars, and in particular this one, because they were the ones who told us that they've had lots of people asking for a webinar on this, and they thought we were the right people to do it. So thank you to Stefan and to Krista for suggesting that. And as ever, we're really delighted to have Joe Dale with us. Joe's just going to give us a little brief introduction as to what he can offer us. Go for it, Joe.
Okay, lovely. So in the chat, I put a list of example sessions I could offer anyone interested remotely or face-to-face. I'm also put in a series of webinars, which I'm co-hosting with the amazing Esmeralda Salgado. One is happening tomorrow. Go to the blog to find out all about that. And finally, I'd like to promote a podcast, which I'm producing for the Post-Primary Languages Ireland organization, which has got 2 episodes out at the moment and has another one coming out in a few days' time, available on Apple, Spotify and Anchor. Do check it out, and we'd love to hear your feedback.
Thank you very much, Joe. And I'm going to do a plug for ALL. ALL supports these webinars. They are run by volunteers. So as well as Joe finding people to talk to introduce and the speakers who give of their time and their expertise without any payment, there is obviously a lot of work behind the scenes as well with the communication, setting up Eventbrite, setting up Zoom, paying extra if we've got lots of people coming, setting up the YouTube, doing the website, moderating, following up. And we don't ask for any payment for that. But what we would love is for you to think, yeah, I'd like to support this by becoming a member as well, by becoming part of the volunteer team. So please, if you're not a member, join. If you are a member, use the chat now to say to people, come on, you must join. In particular, we really like the fact we have a glossy magazine here, which features a lot of, well, some of the people here. I know Vincent in particular, he will be involved in these things as well. So please, please, please do join ALL and read in the chat as people say, yes, you must join. I've put a QR code there, and also there's the address. We've already done loads of webinars, as a lot of you know, and they're all available for you to see. Joe has hosts them on his YouTube channel, but behind that, for each of the webinars, there's a page where we've put the chat, where we've put links to the presentations. So quite a lot of work has gone into that. So please do, by all means, look there and find what you need. We're delighted that we're going to be having our Language World coming up soon. There still are places available if you'd like to come and join us in Sheffield. It's been organised by Liz Black and the team of ALL, and there are going to be some great speakers there, including the great Joe Dale, I seem to remember. So I've talked about the great Joe Dale, but there's also the great Julia Morris, and she's very, very modest. She'll be very embarrassed while I introduce her here, but it really is an absolutely wonderful opportunity to have Julia with us to talk about this particular topic. We were all been very fascinated, haven't we? I think it was November that I first spotted this thing about ChatGPT. There's been an awful lot spoken about it, but in quite a short time, Julia managed to bring together lots of ideas, lots of, she said herself, she's seen ideas from other people, but she's brought them together under headings. And I feel that this is going to be a really, really good session to help you. So in the part 1, she's going to be talking, and we do request if you could keep the chat relevant to what she's talking about, because we'll have chance later on in the following hour to talk about any ideas you've had or anything extra. So the more that you can keep to following Julia, that would be great in the first part. So there she is. I'm one of her greatest fans. I put together this picture of her when she did something on escape rooms. She is wonderful at escape rooms. This is how she describes herself. She says she's a keen early adopter of technology. I mean, actually, you tend to have innovators and adapters and adopters, and I would say there's an awful lot of innovation that she does as well. So Microsoft Educator Trainer, an ambassador for Genially, and she's part of a ChatGPT focus group in her own school. So she's got that experience of being a teacher, but also as a manager. So I'm now going to ask Julia to speak to us for she's going to speak until about 9 o'clock, something like that. And during this time, it'll be Joe and others who are going to be moderating the chat. Before then, Joe takes over at 9 o'clock with our show and tellers. Over to you, Julia. Oh, we can't hear you, Julia, at the moment.
Okay, can you hear me now?
We can, yes. Thank you.
Oh, okay, good. Well, thank you very much for the introduction. In that case, I will get started straight away with ChatGPT. So I'm going to, let me see why it's not working now. Here we go. Can I just get rid of the top bar somehow? Does that always stay on? Sorry, let me turn off my.
Yes,
my
if you
thing
just
here as
hover
well.
at the top, and then you've got the option to be able to remove the bar, and then you press escape if you want it back again.
Hover at the top.
Yes, hover at the top, and then normally, or so that you get all of the things about the view and that sort of thing.
Can I keep it on?
And
Can
then
you see it as well, or
I can't see anything, no, but you can remove the tools. It says hide tools.
As long as they're not in your way, that's fine.
No.
Okay, good. Well, sorry, let's get started. So here's my little overview of what I'm going to talk about. So first, I'm going to give a little introduction of what ChatGPT is and what it can do for people who maybe haven't really seen it before. I'm going to talk about some of the drawbacks and how it maybe influences our teaching practice if more and more people are starting to use it. And then the main part really will be lots of examples of how you can use it for your lessons. So the first part, if you've already used it, then it might not be so exciting because I'm going to show how to sign up to page and so on, but it will be very short, and then we go to the examples. Okay. And so first of all, what is it even? Okay, so it is a language model that has been developed by a company called OpenAI. So they are a research organization which at the moment are making a lot of money with all the interest that people are having in their product. And they had a very big investment by Microsoft. And I think Elon Musk was a bit in the background as well, but now it's mainly Microsoft, and they have just bought quite a big share of this and are working on integrating this into Bing. So their search website. So the special thing about it is that it's very human-like. It can generate lots of different types of texts, and it can react nearly like a person to what you're saying, really, or what you're asking it. And I'll show you some examples in a minute. This program or this website has been trained of a very large corpus of text. So they have fed it basically the whole internet and any text and books that are on there. And from that, they have developed a new way of generating responses, which is a lot better than anything we had before. So it's not just looking up keywords, but it can understand more kind of subtle prompts, which you will see in a minute. Okay, so it can make interferences, and it can link back to what you said earlier in the conversation. So for example, if you say explain that a bit more, it knows what that refers to, which is kind of very human-like. And even after maybe talking to it for a while, you can refer back to what you said much earlier on in the conversation, so to speak. Yeah, I think the best thing to do is really start with a demonstration for people who maybe haven't really seen it in action yet, and also to show you 3 quite cool ideas. Okay, so here are my 3 ideas that I'm going to use, and I'm just going to switch over now to ChatGPT. I'll show you in a minute how you get onto it. So as you can maybe see, I've got ChatGPT Plus. So that means I've got a paid account for this, but you don't need to have a paid account. I come to that in a minute, what the difference is. For the first demonstration, I think I'm going to use the legacy model, which means it's the same as the free version. Otherwise, I can change to the plus version, which is meant to be a little bit faster. So I'll just do the kind of the normal version so you can see what it would look like if you use it. So far, I haven't really noticed that much of a difference. I would say they're both very fast. Okay, so in here we've got our chat window, and here's where I put my prompts. I've already copied it, I think. Have a look. Oh no, I have not copied it. Let's go back to here. Okay, so here's my first prompt. So write a dialogue of a 14-year-old buying train tickets in 100 words in French. Okay, so I guess you can see how that would be quite useful in your lessons for generating an example text. And then I just paste this in here, and you can see that it will start very quickly to write out this dialogue. I'm not going to read it out. My French isn't quite good enough, but hopefully you can see it all. Do you think the size is big enough? Otherwise, Helen needs to read it out.
The size is fine.
Yeah. Okay. So you can see within literally seconds, it has generated this whole dialogue between the ticket seller and the young client. And it's just a normal dialogue, basically, which is exactly what we want for our students to practice for their role playing or how to deal with the situation. And the great thing is I can now ask a follow-up question. So let's go here. So I can now say, give me 5 content questions in English. So if I copy this over, and it will still know that I'm referring to this dialogue at the top there. Oops. What? This is not quite the right thing, is it? Okay, let's try that again. I think it's misunderstood this a bit. Let's see. The presentation effect. Let's try that again. Not sure why it's talking about careers now. Okay, so now I should be able to put my content question. Okay. Why is it doing that? This is really weird. Okay, let's try it again. Sorry, it's kind of disproving my point that it's very clever, but hey. Okay. No, it's not doing it. There you go. Let's make it a bit more obvious in English about the dialogue. Let's see if it understands it now. Okay, so this is a little bit better. So now it's actually asking us questions about the dialogue above. So what is the purpose of the visit to the train station? How does the vendor react, and so on. If I don't like these questions, I can also regenerate them and see if there's any more useful ones. So here it's saying what is their age and so on, how much does the train ticket cost. So these are probably the kind of questions that we would want our students to answer after reading this dialogue. Okay, let's try another one. So we can also generate a whole bilingual story with it. So this works now. Okay, so here I've written, write a story about a trip to Madrid, write each paragraph in a table with the left side in Spanish and the right side in English. And straight away, it's generated this table here, which hopefully you can see that it's a little paragraph about Madrid. And so this is a great way of generating a quick reading exercise for students to practice in their free time, basically, without even needing any help by the teacher, because they can use the English side there. Okay, and my third example, so this is more kind of for the admin side. Last month, I took some kids to the Christmas market in Birmingham, so I could have used this to write the letter to the parents as well. Let's try that. So write a letter to parents, ask for permission for their children to go on a trip to the Christmas market in Birmingham. It's gonna stop now. Okay, here we go. Okay, so if you follow along, sorry, did you lose me?
Just momentarily, but you're back now, Julia, so it's all good.
I'm back now. Okay. Okay, sorry, I'll share again. Okay, so I've generated this prompt to write a letter to the parents for the Christmas market, and it's written me a perfect letter that I could send up to the parents. And it's not only included the things that I've put in my quest here, like that we're going to Birmingham and that is on Monday, but it's added lots of other useful things as well. For example, that at what time we're leaving and what time we're returning. Obviously, it's just made up the times, but I could now copy this whole example and just change it to the times that that apply to my trip. But this is great because otherwise I might have forgotten to put that in. And sometimes it even says, oh, the trip will cost this and this much money. So it reminds you to put all these useful bits of information in. And it's saved me. I mean, this has taken the program a few seconds to write a whole letter, which probably would have taken me quite a long time to come up with the right phrases, how to make it polite, how to make it convincing. And it has even added some extra bits like that it's a fun and educational experience. And actually, when I did it before, it even added facts like that this will be a great way to taste some German food. So not quite sure why it hasn't done it this time, but if we regenerate it, yeah, here it is. So the market is known for its beautiful lights, festive stores, and delicious food. So it has taken the information that it already knows about the Christmas market in Birmingham and has added this into my letter as well. So that is really the part that makes it more human-like, that it kind of draws on other background knowledge it has and puts it in here. Okay, so let's go back to a little bit more of an overview, and then I show you how to sign in, and then I show a few more examples. Okay, so what can ChatGPT do? A lot is the answer, especially generate all kinds of different types of texts. So it can write stories, poems, emails, lyrics, letters, as you have seen. It can write exam answers, which I think is the main pro for me, I would say, because that normally takes me quite a long time to come up with all these example essays. It can then quickly write questions on a text, as we saw in the example with the dialogue at the train station, at least the second time when it then worked. And you can then even ask it, now give me all the answers. And I don't even need to kind of do the task myself because it will put the answers at the bottom. It can generate word lists for a topic, even with definitions or with example sentences and with translations in hundreds of different languages. Another great one is it can summarize, I'll show you later. It can analyze the student text if you put it in, and can give advice on how to improve the text or point out mistakes. And as you saw, it can even generate tables, but it cannot generate images or mind maps in the sense of a picture kind of mind map. It can only have lists or tables at the moment, but it can also write programming language, which we'll come to as well. And it can make comparisons and give you pro and contra arguments, which is great, especially for A-level. I've used it quite a few times when the students had to discuss, I don't know, how much should a town spend on art, and the students didn't come up with good ideas. I didn't really come up with good ideas, so we quickly just asked ChatGPT, and it gave us lots of ideas, which we could then use in our essay in German. Okay, then can also write lesson plans. I mean, there's quite a lot of discussion online if they are good lessons or bad lessons, but there are lesson plan and you can always improve on it. And it can give you writing frames, give you an overview of a topic. It can find mistakes in a student's text, but it's not 100% reliable. and you have to be quite specific and ask it very, very specifically to point out your mistakes. Otherwise, it will always say, oh yeah, your answer was fine, even if there's some grammar mistakes in there. So you need to really force it, because ChatGPT is quite polite and it will normally just encourage you that you're doing fine. And yeah, as I said, you can get improvement ideas for your text and even get some programming. One thing, not really for teaching, but lots of people loving this, that you can put in what you've got in your fridge and will come up with some recipe ideas, which is also quite cool. Okay, then so here are a few of the drawbacks. The first one is it's not always accessible. And what I mean by that is that the website sometimes doesn't let you in. So because at the moment there's so many, literally millions of people signing up to this, because there's so much in the news and so on, that it can be quite hard to actually get into your account. And that's why they have now introduced a paid for account and a free account. So if you've got the free account, you're more likely to have problems with getting in than with the paid account. So that's the main pro of the paid account, which is $20 a month, I think, so a little bit less in pound. That they promise you that you can always get in, basically. But in my experience, before I had the paid account, normally if you wait a few minutes, if you reload your page, then it will normally then work, even if at first it says the website is not available at the moment, or if it says we're at capacity at the moment. Just waiting a little bit, normally at some point you will get in, I would say. Then one big thing is that at the moment the answers can sometimes be wrong. So especially with grammar, I would say the text it generates are very good, and I haven't really found, at least in English and in German, I haven't found any mistakes in what it produces. But sometimes if you ask it, write me a sentence in the perfect tense, it then writes you a sentence in the imperfect tense. So it doesn't necessarily know those kind of grammar terms. And what is even worse, it's very good at making up fake explanations. So you really need to be careful with that, and also warn your students about that if you're getting your students to use it. And even if you're not getting your students to use it, they will use it anyway. So I think it is spreading so quickly, and I've already noticed that quite a lot of my students have it open on their devices. So I don't think we can hide this from them much longer. Just like with Google Translate, they all know very quickly where to get the help. But it's important for them to know that even if the explanation sounds really convincing, it might still have mistakes in it. So for example, it tried to convince me that the word taking is a separable verb, because it was arguing that take and ing is two parts, so it's a separable verb, which clearly it isn't. So you just need to be careful with those explanations. Another example, or another problem, is that it can be sometimes quite superficial, especially if you're asking it to analyze a book or a film. I mean, it does know most books and films that we will do for our A-level study and so on, but the analysis is not kind of very deep. So it will give you kind of an average answer, but not necessarily the best answer you need for an A-level essay. Another one is that it doesn't really give you the source where it found the information. So you don't know if you're asking it kind of a fact, if that fact is true, or where you could check it. So you would then need to do your own research really to find it out. And it even invents sources sometimes. So if you put in, I don't know, research this and this topic and give me 10 10 essays about this topic, it will really confidently say, this professor has written this essay, but it doesn't actually exist, because it just kind of makes it up and sometimes mixes one author with another essay title or the wrong date and so on. So you can't really use it to get a proper citation list. Then it's also important to know that at the moment it does not have access to the internet. So they've trained it with everything that's on the internet until 2021, but then since then it hasn't really been updated. I mean, that might change in the future, especially when it's built into Bing and is part of the whole Microsoft thing, that it will have access to the internet. But at the moment it doesn't. So you can't really ask it what happened last week in the news. And then the last three are probably the kind of the most obvious problems for school, namely, how do we stop our students from using it to do all their homework? But I would say in that respect, we as language teachers have an advantage, because we've already had to fight with Google Translate for the last few years. So compared to the English teachers and history teachers, we already know of those dangers, and we know how to spot the answers that are too good, really. So there are companies at the moment that are developing ways of checking it. So Turnitin, the website where you can check for plagiarism, I think they're working on an update so it can recognize, or at least give you a likelihood that an answer was produced with ChatGPT. But I think for us as language teachers, that's maybe not so important. Well, it's important, but for us, it will be normally obvious if the answer is too good, that it's been made with this, really. Also, the question is, does it prepare the students for exams? Because if they use it a bit too much and use it, for example, to get Vocab List or to get sentence beginnings and so on, it's great for their revision, but maybe at what point do they need to stop using ChatGPT and try to kind of come up with their own solutions if they, for example, don't know a word? Because if they tend to just look everything up, then how do they deal with that in the exam? And then there's a whole moral question in the background, I would say. When is it okay to use it? Because it's so new, it's only come out in December, really. Is it okay, for example, to write a job app, like a job application with this? Would that be okay or not? And society as a whole, I think, kind of needs to answer those questions. Should we use it for those kinds of things? Or is it okay to write a book with this, or get it to write my blog post? Everybody kind of needs to answer that question for themselves, or we as society kind of need to discuss it, I think. But that's also an interesting point that maybe could be raised with students in school, what they think about it. Okay, well, here are some ideas before I get to my example, a few more examples. How we could kind of deal with that problem of students using it for their homework. I mean, this is not just specific for languages, but for all subjects. I mean, this is a great way of switching to a flipped classroom, because you can get students to research a topic with ChatGPT, to research a vocab list, to ask the chatbot maybe come up with 20 good words that I will need to talk about this and this topic that we're doing next week. So it really gives them a lot of opportunity to already start working on a topic before you've even started in class. And then, well, not giving essays a homework, us as language teachers, well, we've already had that problem before. Another idea is to actually create assignments where you can use ChatGPT. So, for example, over the half-term holidays, I told my students, well, my A-level students only, at least twice this holiday, I want you to use ChatGPT to practice a conversation or to read a few texts. Ask it to give you a German text about a topic that interests you. So that could be one way of dealing with this. And also agreeing with the students, what are the rules, when are they allowed to use it, and how far are they allowed to use it, and also explain to them or make them clear that the whole point of homework is that they practice for their exams, or for life, obviously, mainly for life, but also for their exams. And if they get the chatbot to do every homework for them, then, well, they won't be trained up really. So we really need to have that honest discussion with the students, I think. And I would do it rather sooner than later, because yeah, more and more students are discovering it. Okay, should I go on to how to sign up to the page now? I realize I'm already halfway through my time.
That's fine. Good. Thank you. You're doing brilliantly.
Okay, good. So just in case you haven't found it yet, I'll log back out here. So the sorry, there's too much stuff in the way. Still haven't quite got rid of it. So the easiest way really is to Google for ChatGPT. Let's say. So I can't get rid of this little window here. Here we go. Make sure that you don't use any apps that make you pay for it, because there are lots of websites that are trying to kind of make money off this. So you should be able to access it for free. So you come to the OpenAI website, and then down here it says try ChatGPT. And then I'm already logged in, but let me log out here. You can see. Okay, so you should look, it should look like this, and then you can go to sign up. And as you can see down here, you can use your Google account. If you've got a Gmail account or a Hotmail account, you can use Microsoft, or if you've got a school account, you can use them to log in, or you can use any other one up here to just create your account. You will need a phone, because normally you need to put in your phone number, and will then send you a text message the first time you use it, just to verify your identity. But yeah, you should only have to do that once, and from then on you should be able to log in if it lets you in. Okay, then once you're in, you should have this kind of empty window here. I changed it over to the faster version now, just so yeah, text appear a bit quicker. And really all that you need to do is type something into this text box at the bottom here. So let's say write me a text about Germany in 50 words. So try to be as specific as you can, but I'll talk about prompting in a minute. So let's go with this, so it's nice and short. Okay, and let's say it starts generating, but I realize it has misunderstood me. I can click the button at the bottom which says stop generating, and as you can see, it's just stopped in the middle of the sentence there. And then I can actually go back into my text up here, and if I hover over it, you see it has a little edit button there, so I can go back in there and I can add more. Let's say I want to change it to Berlin in 50 words, and put in either. Okay, so now I can save and submit, and then it will give me hopefully the right answer. With word limits, it's not always very precise. So this is probably more than 50 words, but it's more or less correct. So let's say I don't really like this text that is given me. I can now go down here and say regenerate response, and it will give me an alternative answer. So now it's mentioning some different places in Berlin. If I now realize actually the first version was quite good, and or I want to keep some of the first version. If I hover over it, you can see here it says 2 out of 2, because I've had 2 versions of this. So I can just click the little arrow to go back to version number 1, which is quite handy. So I could just then copy both of them and choose the best bit of each one if I wanted to. So you literally can just highlight it and then copy it. And a good trick for when you want to put it in a Word document, I'll just open a new one here. The problem is if you just paste it in, it always has this weird formatting. So it will look like this, which isn't great. So a good trick is to right click and to keep text only, and then will look a little bit better. Okay, so as I said, you can now ask follow-up questions. So you can adapt this a lot and say, for example, tell me more about the nightlife, because it mentions nightlife there. So I could ask it there, tell me more about the nightlife. There you go. And I mean, if you did this in Google, it wouldn't really realize what nightlife you're talking about. It would now talk about nightlife in general, but this is quite clever because it realized that I'm still talking about Berlin. So it's now talking about Berlin nightlife. I'll stop this here. It's giving me all this extra information. And I could even say, for example, give me more detail about the last sentence you wrote, or give me more details about example number 3. So it's very good how it knows this. And I can always change from one language to another. So I could just say, now the same in German. And it straight away translates it now into German. Okay, I'll just stop this for now. Over here on the side, you have a list of all the different chats that you've already done. So I've got quite a long list here. It automatically generates the title. So as you can see here, the one where I bought some tickets, it automatically made a title there in French, that it's a ticket text. And then this one, it's just called German text summary, because, well, I guess because I'm talking about Germany and I wanted it in 50 words, so it assumes it's a summary. So it's quite handy, but you can always change the title and just change it here to whatever you want. You can also delete the chat and so on. The good thing about having the different chats is that within the chat, it will refer back to what it said before. So for example, here, it knows that I'm talking about Germany and about Berlin. So it will tend to talk about Berlin. So if I now wanted to talk about nightlife in general, for example, it would make sense to open a new chat. So it forgets that we're talking about Berlin and then give me a general answer. The same with once you've started talking in German, it tends to then keep on answering in German or in French or whatever language. So if you want to kind of switch languages completely, I would recommend always starting a new chat. So it kind of is like a clean slate, basically. So these different chat windows are a bit like your tabs in your browser or something. So yeah, keep them apart if you're starting completely new topic or new language, I would say. Okay. Oh, I still got so many things. Let's go. Okay, so try to go through this quite quickly. So the difference between Google and ChatGPT is really, I would use Google for facts and ChatGPT to produce texts and to produce examples. I would say that's the main difference. Also, if you really need to know where a piece of information came from, and if you need to make sure that it's a trustworthy source, then I would use Google. But ChatGPT is much better to adapt text and create lots of different types of text. It also means it's quite distraction free. So if you're using this with students, they're not distracted by having 100 different websites and they don't know where to start. And some of them will have lots of adverts on them, or things that are maybe blocked on your school network. So ChatGPT is much more accessible, I would say, to students who find it difficult to deal with lots of other input, and it just focuses them on the text. Okay, so for your prompt, I think a lot of people online have said the better the prompt, the better the answer. I mean, that's kind of logical, but you need to get used to it a little bit, because on Google, if you're looking for something, it's often good to be as general as possible, so you get lots of websites about that topic. But on ChatGPT, you really want to be as specific as possible to get the right kind of text. So you can specify a role for the chat box. So for example, you are a careers advert, give me advice about this and this, or you are a French shopkeeper or a Spanish shopkeeper selling bread rolls, talk to me. So give it a role. And some people online have found that if they tell the chatbot, you're an excellent author of exciting stories, then it actually does generate better texts. So I haven't really found that yet, but maybe a bit more trying out. Then I would specify the target audience. So you could say, write a text so that a 10-year-old can understand, or write a text with limited knowledge of English or French. So that will make it have the text a little bit easier. I mean, it's often still quite a high level if you're teaching beginners. But if you say, write a text so that a 5-year-old can understand, then it will use less complicated grammar, which should help the learners. You can give it a word limit, as we've seen before, so in 50 words or in bullet points and so on. Tell it what you want exactly. Like if you want a mind map, if you put in, give me a mind map about, it will normally say, I can't produce mind maps, I can only produce text. But if you say, give me a mind map in text form, it then will generate the bullet points with sub-bullet points and so on. And you can actually train the chatbot up. So you can paste in a whole mark scheme. I mean, you have to convert it to a text first, but you can actually make it into an expert on your topic by giving it the mark scheme and then pasting in an exam question or an exam answer and ask it to mark it. And it will actually give you a reasonably good estimation of the mark. You could also give it example answers and say, okay, here are 5 really good answers to this text. Give me another one. And this way, the chatbot will see what kind of level you want, what kind of length you want, what kind of structures you want, and so on. So it does pay off to train it up a little bit. But then you should try and use the same chat window, because as I said, in each chat window, it will remember what you've said before. So once you've trained it up with your mark scheme or with your examples, don't close that window, keep that one open, because that's where it will remember all those different things. And yes, always give follow-up questions. So if it gives you answers that are too long, too short, too complicated, just ask it. Just say, make it easier, make it shorter, focus more on the content, focus more on the grammar, and so on. So it can do all those different things. Okay, see if we can get to the next one. We're working now. Oh, here we go. Okay, so now I'll come to a few examples. Oh, this is meant to be the longest part of the presentation, but now I've only got 10 minutes. Let me see some good ones. Okay, at least I've already shown you some. So I can share this document with people later anyway, so you can try out these prompts yourself. So I've just written out the prompts just so I don't have to write them out. So I would say maybe I'll show this one, which is a typical GCSE 90-word question. I've translated it into English just so that teachers of all languages will understand and see what happens. So let's just feed it a 90-word question here. So our question here is, what do you normally do on holiday? What kind of holiday do you prefer? Where you went your last holiday, and what are your plans for next summer? So it's a typical thing. And it's given me a nice little text here, the typical thing we would expect at GCSE level. So next summer I plan to go to Hawaii and so on. So this is great. Now, obviously, imagine it in your target language. It's a nice little text that you could give your students as a reading task or as an example exam question. I can now, also say, let me go back, sorry. I could now say, give me 5 content questions on this. There we go. Oops. Oh, now it's not talking to me. Let me try that again. Yeah, it's checked me out. Sorry. That's the problem with it being too popular. Okay, can I stop the share for a sec so I can log in? Sorry. Hopefully it will work. And then, okay, now it works again. So there you go. Okay, so now it has given me some questions. So what activities you did, where they went on holiday, and so on. And I could even ask it for the answers. So give me the answers. And it now tells us the author likes to relax, have fun, and explore new places, and so on. So if I'm a lazy teacher, I can just do that, and it will give me all the answers as well. And so there's lots of examples here. So you can have past tense questions. You can even feed it a vocab list. So this one is maybe quite a good example that people might not realize, that I've literally just taken the vocab list from my textbook for year 9 and put it in here. And I'm saying, write me 50 words in the style of a 7-year-old. So I've put in a 7-year-old, so it keeps it very simple because it's for beginner German learners in my case. So I put that in there. So because it's meant to pretend to be a child, it's sometimes put in funny things like hey ya and so on. But really, we've got a nice little text here, and it has used a lot of these words from the text, like what's your favorite animal, about cats and guinea pigs and so on. So it hasn't used all of them, but it has made me a nice little example text. And remember, you can just regenerate it and produce 5 different texts, and then choose which one you like best, or give them all to the students with different tasks. And I have to say, it often comes up with text that I wouldn't necessarily have chosen, or I wouldn't have produced myself, but are actually quite good to give the students more different types of input. So for example, I asked it to write a text about my favorite things, and for favorite football team, it didn't just say my favorite football team is Man United or whatever, but it said my favorite football team plays in the first league or in the Premier League. So it was quite nice to just have different words in there, and it was a nice task for the student to have to work out in German what does the word Premier League mean and so on. So yeah. Another very impressive one is that it can summarize the text. And just think how amazing this is if you, for example, have a news article in Spanish or whatever, and you want to have this a lot shorter and a lot easier for your students. So in this case, I've taken a text from just the BBC News, basically. So taking this from this morning's news. So it's something about taxes here. And I can now say, summarize this text so that a 7-year-old can understand it. There you go. See? Okay, and it's kind of dumbed down the text a bit. The government got some extra money, even though it spent money. Earlier when I did this task, it even explained who the chancellor was. So it's really a great way if you can do this and just put in the current news from your target country, and it gives you a little summary. And remember, I could also do the summary in French or Spanish or Italian or whichever country language you want. So, and I mean, just having to summarize this whole text, this would have taken me ages to kind of make it easy enough for my student to read. And this way you can really keep your lessons up to date, I would say. So that's great. Something else that people might not realize is that you can create gap fill tasks. So if I do this, so this is create a gap fill task out of the nouns in this text, create 7 tasks, 7 gaps. And then I've just put a little text there about my holiday. With the gap fill task, it's a little bit weird because sometimes it does it like this, that it just highlights some of the words. You can see it has kind of put in bold: sunshine, local area, and foods. Sometimes it replaces the gaps with numbers, or sometimes it does it with these gaps like here. So I guess you need to be a bit more specific exactly in what format you want to have your gaps, which I haven't really done here. I've only specified that I wanted 7 gaps, but with a little bit of playing around, you can do that. You can also get it to put the options at the bottom, or you can even get it to generate 3 different options for each gap. And then the students have to decide which of the 3 options makes sense here. So it's just so quick to generate any kind of task you want about any topic you want, which is just amazing. If you put in the word quiz, it will always generate multiple choice questions. So I guess that's kind of maybe the American way of using word quiz. So if I put in here, create a coordinating conjunction quiz with just 2 questions, because I want to keep it short, it's come up with all these multiple choice questions, and it's even giving me the answers, but it kind of fell asleep at the end there, but hey. I know, actually here it's answer A and answer B. Is that right? Yeah, so I mean, with these tasks, you always need to check if the answer is actually right, because sometimes I found that if you say, give me questions about the text, it includes questions that aren't included. So for example, it might say, I don't know, how did the person feel on holiday? But it doesn't actually say in the text, it just says, I went to the beach. So sometimes it kind of thinks you need to infer the answers. So you as the teacher really need to check that all the questions can actually be answered with the text. Especially if you're getting it to summarize the text first, it has a tendency to ask questions about the longer version of the text. So maybe put the summarized version in a new chat to just make sure that it just concentrates on that one. Then I think I'll move on from what you can do with generating text. I'll skip the fun bit as well. So I just want to point out that I would say there are 2 big uses for language features. So we can use it for us to generate our lessons, as I showed here, like giving, making answers, making example text and so on. If you're brave enough, you can also get your students to use it themselves. And as I said earlier, I've talked to my sixth formers about it because I think they are responsible enough to use it sensibly, hopefully. I think I need to talk to my lower classes about it as well, because there's just so many cool things you can do with it. Like, for example, they could put something in like this. So pretend you're a shopkeeper selling t-shirts. I'm the customer coming in, greet me and ask me questions. So they can have a whole little dialogue. And obviously, again, you need to imagine they're doing this in French or Spanish or German or whatever. So here's now a shop seller. So he's asking me, what would you like to have? So I could say, I want to buy a red shirt. And then he's pretending to be the shop seller again, or the shop person, and asking me more follow-up questions. So just think how great this would have been at the time when you had to learn your foreign language, and how much easier it is to practice those kind of little dialogues with this. And whenever you get stuck, you can just say, oh, how do I say this in this word in German? Or is this sentence correct? Can you give me the past tense form of this word, and so on? So you can really have a dialogue and use it as if you have your own personal, really language partner. So it is worth telling your students about it, I think, especially the motivated ones. Shall I quickly say something about admin, or shall I hand over now?
You're muted, Helen, just to let you know.
Sorry, I was expecting you to read my lips. I'm going to say you've given us absolutely loads of ideas, and I can see that there are an awful lot of really good ideas that you've had to skip through.
Yes.
I'm absolutely convinced that we're going to be having another webinar on this, because this is something that's so new to everybody. And if you remember, for our Microsoft webinars, we got to about webinar number 6 eventually. I can see that already what you've given us has really sparked off lots of things. Other people are joining in saying yes, and they found other things. So almost for us to say, we'll be definitely having another one, so you don't have to feel you have to rush through.
Yes, I think I'm rushing a bit. I apologize.
Well,
but
no,
yes, there's so many different things to talk about.
And the other thing, I mean, do you want to just advertise your YouTube video that you've done on this? And then perhaps we could put that into the chat as something that people can look at.
Yes.
So we'll put that into the chat, and really to ask you about anything that you can share with us. That would be great, so that people can look at it afterwards. So
yeah, I mean, I can share this document which has all the different example prompts, so people can just try it out themselves. And I can share the PowerPoint where I've taken some screenshots to just show what kind of answers I got. But yeah, I'm sure the other people will show a few of these ideas as well. And
well, I mean,
yeah, we can do a follow-up as well.
I mean, if you're prepared to share us I can see you've got 8 pages of things where really you've given us the principle of it. And I think, the things that I found very, very useful are the tips about how to make things more defined. And those are the examples you've got. So thank you ever so much, Julia, for that. If everybody in the chat could show their appreciation for Julia, and I'm sure we'll be seeing a lot more of you, and we'll be carrying on this conversation with you later on. So thank you ever so much. Really, really, really good.
No problem.
Okay, so now Joe is going to introduce some people who would like to share their ideas.
Fantastic. Well, first of all, Julia, thank you so much for that presentation. That was absolutely jam-packed full of ideas, really interesting content, and I'm sure the first of a few webinars on ChatGPT. So because there were so many people that wanted to present about ChatGPT, Helen and I decided we'd have sort of like an extended version of a typical hour-long tilt webinar, and have this probably will be like another hour show and tell. We're recording it, of course, so if you are needed to get to your bed or what have you, or you've got other things to do, then feel free to come back and watch the recording. But we would love for those people who have given the time to present for say 5 minutes now, if they want to come back and give longer versions or give more ideas at another date, then we would love to hear from you. And anyone in the chat right now who'd also like to volunteer ideas as well, I think it'd be really great just to get lots of different people sharing their ideas in a show and tell format, similar to the Microsoft presentations that we did, the workshops that we did during the pandemic. So
can I just interrupt just before you go on? There
Yeah.
are 15 people watching us on YouTube. If I could say to you that there's still plenty of room in the Zoom room. If you want to come in and then follow the chat that's going on, that would be great. I meant to say that earlier on. So all you have to do is to go to your Eventbrite invitation and then click on the Zoom link rather than the YouTube one. Thank you.
That's all right, no problem. I wanted to say a disclaimer as well about if you want to create an account, it does say in the terms of service that you do need to be 18 or above. So not only do you have to put a mobile phone number in, you do have to be 18 or above. So just to be very clear on that, if we're talking about using it with students. Okay, so what we're going to do tonight is we're going to start off with the amazing Sandra Aktas, who presented many years ago now, start of the pandemic, seems like a lifetime ago now, around ChatGPT. We're then going to have a few videos which we're going to play that people have very kindly recorded for us because they weren't able to come live or they were tired or what have you. That's all good. And then we'll have some more people presenting live, another video, and then we've got some more people presenting live from there. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Sandra to talk for the next 5 minutes around creating a full lesson with ChatGPT for A-level students, reflection on efficiency and a pedagogical approach. So over to you, Sandra. Thank you so much for doing this.
Hi, nice to be there. I'm going to just check. Can you see me now?
Yep, we can.
It's asking me share Notion, so I guess I'm going to close that. I'm going to try to share my screen. And I am going to present from OneNote today. This is basically was coming up from an idea which I had, was to try to create a full lesson using ChatGPT, not with the idea to decide if it was good or bad in the beginning, but just to see if it was possible. And then we can reflect on maybe whether it's a good thing to do or a bad thing, what is limitation and how to make it better. So I picked my lesson on A-level because I think the topic was quite tricky and I actually struggled finding sources for it. And it was to do with professional qualification in France. And it was the topic of education on the EdXL program. And the book is a bit limiting on that. So I normally search my sources on the internet, but I thought, let's try something different. So the lesson I'm going to show you was 100% created with ChatGPT, and but not the lesson plan itself. So I made the lesson plan myself. I decided what I was going to do, and then I asked ChatGPT to produce the individual task. So to start with, I wanted to create a little bit of vocab. So I asked ChatGPT to produce a little vocab list for me on the topic. So I said, can you please create me a vocab list for A-level students speaking about professional qualification? And he came up with that. So I just cut and paste, and then we spoke with my student about the translation, how we could use it in sentences. That was actually was quite a good start to the lesson. Then we went to a gap fill exercise. So what you've got there is just the result of it, but you don't have the prompt, because that is basically my lesson when I produce on OneNote. So it's a gap fill. So again, I asked ChatGPT to produce a gap fill for me on this topic using keywords, and I didn't say anything else. And it produced this really kind of nice text on it with some really, I mean, I think it's quite solid in terms of the content, so I didn't change it. And then the words are fine. And on a different page, I've got the answer for myself, so I'm not sharing that with the student immediately. Then that was quite good. I just said, create me now a text about this topic using example, and then create me, I think I said 6 comprehension questions. And it did that. And I did check that it was all correct and there were no mistakes in it, because sometimes it does create text with content mistakes. So you just have to double check that. And it was fine. And I was quite happy with that. I did ask to generate the answer, cut and paste on a different site for me. And it was it. And then I thought I wanted to do either a listening or a speaking activity. So listening is a bit tricky because it can produce transcript for you, but it can't record it. So I was like, but I want to do something pure ChatGPT. So I thought I would do a speaking session. I had the idea to create a role play. And I did play a bit with that one. So I said, create a role play with 2 students speaking about the advantage and disadvantage of professional qualification. And it was a bit random, the text. So then I went into BTS and DUT. So these are 2 different professional qualifications in France. And then it was a bit more specific. Then I did name to the student. And I give a bit of input. So I say one of them is going to like it, one of them is not going to like it. And eventually, after 3-4 tries, it gave me quite a good role play, which I made the student play together and change slightly in class. Then they asked for some question about it and gave me the question. That took me about 10 minutes in class. It was quite good, actually. And then I thought I wanted to do more speaking. So I did ask the app to give me eventual A-level oral questions that they could have in an exam. So they were a bit random. So I did a lot of cut and pasting, but then ended up with 10 quite solid questions. And some of them, to be fair, I wouldn't actually think about it. So I was quite impressed with that. And then to make it more interesting, I asked it to answer some of them. And I basically cut and pasted the answer, but the student had to read the answer and try to find which question it was answering to. So that's me that just came up with that. It was quite a good exercise as well. And finally, to push the level up, I did ask ChatGPT to give me some advanced information about this topic, and it gave me quite name of school and things like that. So it was good. So that is the full lesson. It took an hour. And all I did, if I show you the full screen again, is just added some picture by everything except the title in yellow. That's me. But everything it's produced by ChatGPT, and it took me really not much time to produce that. My personal reflection on that is, it's not too bad. I think it's a bit artificial. It's like a bit of authenticity, I would say. So now I wouldn't probably use it for full lesson, but to create a gap fill, it's really good. To create a text where you can find an authentic material, it's good. To create an occasional role play is good, but I think doing everything in once may be a bit too much. But that would be nice to have a conversation with our teacher and something to reflect on. But at least I hope you can see that it's possible to create, and with a bit of thinking and direction, I think it creates quite good, solid lesson. I'm more worried about the content accuracy sometimes, because the way it works, it creates text that you want to hear. So it's got a tendency to give you an answer that sometimes are not 100% correct. So you need to make sure you know your topic when you create your lesson, and not just believe the answer it's giving you. But on this specific topic, it was pretty convincing. So that's me. I'm 5 minutes in.
That was excellent timing. Well done, Sandra. Hopefully everyone will keep to the same timing. So much that you crammed into that. That was amazing. So I've only got a minute for changeover. So the next presentation is a video from Sarah Shooter, and I'm going to share my screen. If you could stop sharing your screen, Sandra, please, if that's okay. There we are. I'm just going to go for it. There we are. So I've got all the videos here, and I've got another video here as well. So this is Sarah Shooter, and she's going to be talking about using ChatGPT to create a variety of reading and listening activities at Key Stage 2 and 3. So here we go. Over to Sarah.
Good evening, everybody. My name's Sarah. I'm going to give you a really quick whistle-stop tour of a few time-saving things that I use ChatGPT for. We're going to be looking at some quick reading and listening activities at Key Stage 2 and 3. Now, firstly, just a quick outline. So we're going to be talking about some narrow reading and listening text, creating some gap fills, creating some model dialogues, and creating some true or false and find someone who activities. Now, first one I want to talk about is narrow reading and listening transcripts. You can see here my first command was to ask ChatGPT to create a 50-word text in French about Richard. He's 30 years old. He plays ping pong on Sunday with his sister. Okay, so I've included the things there that I want the text to contain, and you can see that the translation is pretty good. It's done a good job. I would use that. Okay, there's quite a high level of comprehensible input included in that little paragraph, which is really similar to what I have got on my sentence builder. Then I asked it to create one about Rose. Wasn't so successful in that. If the first one that it produced, I asked it to make this text more simple. The joke was on me. It actually ended up being a little bit more complex. I would need to edit Rose's text. I would need to tweak that a little bit. So for Key Stage 2, I would probably produce 3 of these. For Key Stage 3, I would probably produce 5. You can also use these for listening transcripts as well. Now, once you've produced those, you can use those same texts again to create a gap fill activity. My command was create a gap fill activity on the following text, include the answers underneath in both French and English. Now you can see it's done a good job of that again. It's given me 5 little gaps there, and it's also included the answers underneath, exactly what I wanted to do. And then at the bottom, I have specified that it also give me a translation of that paragraph. For Key Stage 2, I would probably include the translation just for a little bit of additional support. Now, something else I absolutely love using ChatGPT for, it's great for this, creating model dialogues for speaking, reading and listening. You can exploit these in a number of ways. My command was create a short dialogue in French between 2 friends for a Key Stage 2 learner. The friends are talking about sports and instruments they play and how often. Use simple language. Now, anybody that teaches Key Stage 2 or Key Stage 3 French, you'll take one look at this. This is all very familiar. This is really good. High level of comprehensible input here. This is exactly the vocab that I would want. So it's done a super job. Probably took me 15 seconds to generate it. I might not stop there. I might want to exploit that in a number of different ways. I've asked it to create a gap fill. You could ask it to also include the answers underneath, but alternatively for probably Key Stage 3, you could just ask students to complete the gap with an appropriate word. So they have to think about their chunks, they have to think about the topic, and just fill in an appropriate word for that activity. Now we're using those 3 narrow reading texts again, and we are creating a find someone who activity in English based on these following texts. Now oddly, when I went back and reviewed the questions, they didn't include any from text C for this one for Alanis, which was a bit strange. And in the first instance, it only gave me 3 questions with too much information in. So I requested that it only include 1 fact per question and create 8 questions, and to mix them up as well, which it did. And then you can see there at the bottom it has included the answers for me. I would need to go back and request that it included some questions about Alanis as well. I'm not sure why it missed that one out, but here I've used those 3 texts again to create a true or false activity. You can see that this time it did include some questions about Alanis, so I'm not sure why she got missed out. My command was to create a true or false activity in English based on the following text and include the answers. It's done this beautifully. It took seconds for me to generate, and I could use that as is. Okay, so really, really useful. You can see, you know, we're saving a considerable amount of time here. So just in summary, as we have seen from the slides, there are some limitations and challenges. We need to make sure that for Key Stage 2 and 3, we are focusing on that comprehensible input. So for me, it would need to be very similar to what is on my sentence builders, for example. So the best result really, I feel like at this level would be from the teacher inputting the material to be exploited. You can ask it to generate, but it could be that it would need to be tweaked. You need to be clear in your commands. If you want it to generate, you can ask it to simplify the language for a Key Stage 2 or 3 learner, and you can also ask it to include specific targeted vocab, so things that you would be working on at that time. And also, just lastly, if you want it to produce material in L2, you need to always double check it. There are some little mistakes and little errors which would need to be edited. So thank you very, very much for listening. That is my email address there. If you've got any questions, it's sarahcshooter@gmail.com, and my Twitter handle is @scshoots. Bye everyone.
Fantastic. So huge thank you to Sarah for that. That's amazing. We're now going to move on to Sonia Fedrizi, her video, because unfortunately she wasn't able to join us this evening. So her video is here on YouTube, and I'm going to play it for you right now. Let's just go full screen and unmute and enjoy.
Hi, and welcome to this short video on how to create narrow reading tasks in ChatGPT. I can't be here tonight. I can't be with you tonight because, as you can hear, I'm a bit under the weather. But I'm looking forward to catching up with the recording of this webinar soon. So here are the 3 tasks that I regularly use in my classes. I follow Gianfranco Conti's EPI method. And so these 3 tasks are taken from the receptive processing stage of it all. So starting off with, hang on, spot the difference, what differences I should say. I asked the app to produce 150 word text, and I was specific in terms of what to include, so the accusative and dative case, I was specific in terms of what I wanted to be changed, which should be different. And then I wanted the app to produce the results at the very end, which it did. I did that twice. So second time I asked it to include to change items of furniture, which it did successfully as well. So I was very happy with that. And at the end, it told me what it had changed. So I would say it is it is a time saver. What I do want to point out, though, that you do always have to check for mistakes at the end, because there are often mistakes in it. So that's definitely something you need to keep in mind. For gap fill activities, I've used a directed writing task for hire, and I asked it to produce a text. This is an exact exact scenario from a past paper. So I've asked it to produce a text, and I was very happy with the text. And then I wanted a gap fill activity, and it didn't do that, and it didn't work so well at the beginning. So obviously it claimed that it did include all of these gaps, but really, as you can see, it didn't. Now I then said, okay, well, can you leave out one verb per sentence? And that didn't happen either, although we're getting into the right direction. Going into the right direction, I should say. But then the verbs or the gaps were only in a certain area of the text, the very end. So then I asked it to spread out the gaps more evenly, which it did, but then other issues occurred, as you can see. So it used other types of words as gaps, and that I didn't want. So I had to be really specific and say, please, you don't use that, use a verb. Eventually, I did get what I wanted. It did take some time. So I don't know if, I'm sure there's a faster way of doing that. So I'm sure someone tonight might have got the answer to this issue. However, I was happy overall, and it did save time for me. So the last type of text that I wanted to be produced, or texts I should say, were for the bad translations. I was again asking ChatGPT to produce a text, and I said, okay, I want these chunks to be included. It produced a text, as you can see, and a few minor changes I wanted it to make. You can see them here. And then I wanted texts that were badly translated, and I wanted them to be, as you can see here, where I say you need to make mistakes that S1 students of French can easily detect earlier. The mistakes that were made weren't really obvious. So, and it did that, as you have a look here, as you can see. These are a lot more obvious mistakes for my S1s to detect and to flag up. So, and I did that again with another text, and again it worked. So that was a really fast way of producing the bad translation activity. What you do have to be mindful of is that sometimes, and I mentioned that earlier, there sometimes are mistakes or translate in this type of activity. There are translations that you're not happy with. So there's for example, it was développer was translated as to grow. So I wasn't happy with that because I knew my students wouldn't be able to discover that. So I changed that, and all in all, I have to say that I'm definitely going to be using this app regularly. It does save time, and it's certainly something we need to explore further in the future. Thank you so much, and have a good evening, everyone. Hi, and welcome to this short.
Fantastic. So I'm sure I speak on behalf of everybody wishing Sonia a quick recovery. She did sound a little bit under the weather. So we're very grateful that she was able to join us. Next up is the last video for this section, which is from Francois Stolder. Francois is in Greece at the moment, so he's not able to join us live because it would be coming up to about 11:30 there. So I'm going to play Francois' one. His is slightly longer. He said he couldn't keep it under, it's about 7 minutes. So do bear with Francois, but he gets very passionate about ChatGPT, which is a joy to see. So here's Francois Stolder talking about how we can use ChatGPT.
Hi and good evening everyone. Sorry that I can't be with you this evening, but it would have been nearly midnight where I am had I to present in person. So apologies to everyone, and thank you Joe and your team for allowing me to present like this through this recording. I try to create some kind of an atmosphere so it looks real. My name is Francois Stolder and I teach French, German and Spanish at the American International School of Budapest. My Twitter handle is on the screen. Tonight I want to talk to you about how you can use ChatGPT daily and it can help you work smarter and not harder. How it can help you impress people simply because you have more time to do everything faster and better. And how you can have more time for yourself and for your students and really to focus on what really matters. So ChatGPT can do all kinds of things, as we know, and my colleagues who are speaking this evening, I'm sure will show a lot of those things. Something that is coming through really strongly, though, is that we as educators must refocus our mind, we must refocus our attention on what really matters when it comes to learning. What do I and my students need to know and be able to do in order to flourish and care for ourselves, for others, even for our planet? Now, I've watched quite a few videos, read a lot of articles. I even wrote an article myself about ChatGPT, and I've listened to podcasts, and there are a few important questions that have been raised. The first one being, where do we as educators invest our time? Or which types of learning do we want to provide our students with and put more emphasis on? What opportunities do those new tech tools provide for our students? Another one is, what should the regulations be? And the big question, of course, is how do I, as an educator, develop ways of knowing, of doing, even of being? So let's look at more examples to illustrate what I'm saying. One thing is sure, technology is not replacing human interactions or the traditional way of teaching. Instead, it's enhancing it, it's making it better. I place people in two categories. The skeptics, they don't believe in it and they don't want to use it. And the believers, they believe in ChatGPT because it helps them as a source of information and a tool in their daily tasks. I am a believer. I asked the chatbot, to write a back-and-forth dialogue between two people in French about their favorite type of music for a beginner student of French, and the verbs had to be in the present tense. And this is what I got. Then I asked the bot to remove the persons, and this is what I got. And then I asked the bot to provide an explanation of the present tense of regular verbs, with some examples. This is what I got. Then in German, I asked the bot to create a study plan for my A2 students with some explanation and some examples for different topics of grammar that we've been studying during the year. And this is what it started doing. Then I said, well, let's have a back and forth conversation in Spanish about our favorite sport at the beginner level. And I asked the bot to start. This is what I got. I was not quite satisfied. So I tried again. But next time around, I said, well, this time you must give only one answer. You must stop after the first question. Then I will reply. So I did. So the bot started. I replied. I typed in Spanish. And then, because I made a lot of mistakes, I corrected my mistakes, and it created a dialogue that I wanted, with the types of answers that I wanted, with correct spelling. Then my students create websites in German. They create their German websites, and when they do, they type in German. and they make a lot of mistakes. So I said to the bot, correct the mistakes in this German text and explain them to the students. And it did, like this. So then what I asked the student to do is to go back to their text and correct it using the correction that is provided, something that I would normally do, but instead the bot does it for me. Then I asked the bot to provide a list of German nouns, adjectives, and verbs so students can use to write on the topic of entertainment Welt. And the nouns had to have articles, and the verbs there was to be a list of separable and inseparable verbs. And I got this list, and I can use that list as a writing prompter to help students develop their vocabulary for a particular topic. Then I asked the bot to simplify this article from Le Monde, Les Jeux Olympiques de Paris 2024, and to write it in simple French, but I was not quite satisfied with the result. So I said, make it even simpler so that, simplify this passage so that it is for an audience of French beginners using simple vocabulary so they can understand without a dictionary. All the verbs had to be in the present tense, and this is what I got. And finally, if I had a simple text created by the chatbot again, I could get something like read aloud Crow extension to read it out loud to practice reading comprehension, listening comprehension, and also speaking with my students so they can practice their pronunciation. So really, you can produce all kinds of resources at your fingertips in a jiffy for your students, for them to practice their reading, their listening, their speaking skills, grammar, vocabulary, all kinds of things you can do. But for yourself as well, you can generate report card comments. And of course, you're not going to copy paste what you get from the bot. You're going to adapt it. You can write emails. So write the ideas that you want to say in your email, and then you ask the bot to generate your emails. You can ask the bot to formulate your email in a certain style, add humor, for example. In the future, we as educator, we will need to teach our students in new ways. So before we do that, we need to teach ourselves to teach and work in new ways. So thank you. I'm thankful for this opportunity to speak tonight, as it gave me a chance to develop my own critical mindset, my critical skill, and explore the different ways that we can continue using ChatGPT. Thank you, Joe, and everyone who came together to put this webinar together. It was fantastic.
So thank you to Francois for that. That was fantastic. I loved the bit when he said, I'm a believer. It made me think of the monkeys. But there we are. Now we do have someone live in the house. It's not all videos. We have Vincent Everett. So Vincent, I'm going to stop sharing. If you want to get yourself ready, share your screen. Thank you for your lovely comments throughout the session and your comments on Twitter in general about ChatGPT and particularly culture. So over to you, Vincent. You've got a couple of minutes now to present.
Right. I don't know if you can see me. I'm not going to share my screen. I said to Joe I'd be really quick. I think Joe knew that Francois was going to be a couple of minutes over, and I'm going to be a couple of minutes under. I can see Joe. I don't know if you can see me.
Yeah, we can see. We can see the top of your head. But
oh no!
It's all good.
Well,
oh yeah, that's a bit better. There you go. I'll turn my video off, and I'll give you the full
okay
gamut. There we are.
Still can't see me. I shall get started. Right. I was just going to make a few comments about what ChatGPT is and what it isn't, and about how it works with language. It's basically, at the end of the day, that's typical, using received ideas and standard expressions. It's a glorified predictive text. You know, with your phone, when you put in a word, it will come up with what the next word should be and what the next word should be. It's a very clever version of this, and I shouldn't use the word clever. It's a version of this that's got lots of data and can give the impression of being clever. In other maybe subject areas, this is a problem because it will make mistakes and it will have bias. We just mainly want it for the language. So perhaps for us, it's great, especially the idea of chatting with it. It does work principally in English. When you're making it work in German, it's translating at the moment from English. When you're making it work in French or Spanish, it's translating from English. And I've been poking it a little bit trying to break it to get to the heart of this and where the bias is. I asked it in Spanish who the president was in 1994, and it told me, who was it? Well, it's Mexico, it'd be Ernesto Cedillo. But it assumed that even though I was asking in Spanish, it gave me the American answer. So culturally, it's English. It's been trained on texts in English. I asked it in French who the most famous singers were, and it gave me a whole load of English singers. I asked it for French singers, and it gave me French singers that an English person would have heard of. And I tried the same thing in Spanish, and I tried it with food as well. And it came up with a lot of stereotypical stuff that, from an English speaking point of view. So culturally, it's English speaking, but also language. I asked it in Spanish for the rules for using question marks. And it gave me the rules for using question marks in English, but with all the examples in Spanish. And all its examples perfectly had the upside down question mark at the start and at the end, but it made no mention of it in the rules, because even though I asked it in Spanish, it works from English. It was giving me the English rules for English questions in Spanish with Spanish examples, but it was just all over the place. Same sort of thing with sans ça in French. You can get in a muddle where it stops working because it's working in English and all those words mean his or her or its, and it gets its knickers in a twist which one it's saying. And if you ask it to manipulate a text or make questions or a gap fill, what was a perfectly good text, it can lose sight of when it's going backwards and forwards into English. Poems in Spanish and things like that. When I first started, I just thought it was terrible at rhyming in Spanish or terrible at writing poems, but I think it is because it writes in English, then it translates into Spanish and your rhyme just doesn't work. I asked it to write me a story using the 2000 most common words in French only for the high frequency vocab. It wrote me a story and it had included the word dragon, sword, and when I said, you haven't done what I asked, it said, oh, sorry, I haven't used the most common 2000 words in French, have I? I said, no. Can you do it again? And it wrote them again, and it replaced dragon with big scary animal, but it replaced sword with compass, boussole, not the sort of pair of compasses you use in class, but the compass for finding your way. So it doesn't do what it says it's going to do. Yeah. What have I got left? Oh, and in the style of, it was, again, it doesn't know lots of cultural references. And so you can ask it to write something in the style of a poet or a playwright or a singer, but its references are mainly English or known to the English speaking world. So just watch out. It's very good, but it's limited at the moment. Hopefully it will have other languages coming in, and watch it because it pretends to do things that it hasn't. It says it's done things with high frequency words. It says it's done something in the style of, and it just hasn't. Right. Okay. Thank you.
Fantastic. Pithy, lovely, pragmatic, great stuff. And lots of lovely comments in the chat. Vincent, if you weren't watching them as you were speaking, that was great. So we now, and you've kept really well to time as well. So that's lovely. Well done. Gold star. So now we've got Jérôme Nogues, who's going to talk about how we can use ChatGPT with generating a transcript in Word. And yeah, let's just play the video because it's getting late. Here we go.
Hi guys, sorry I can't be here tonight. I'm a bit busy at home and COVID made an appearance again, sadly. So very, very quickly, to avoid cognitive overload, and just to show you something that I do with ChatGPT and a bit of app smashing with Microsoft Word. I've gone to that website from Radio France. I will put a QR code at the end so you can scan it. It's nice, and they've got lots of little stories and stuff like that. It's aimed at French pupils, but it's nice little things if you're doing French, obviously. ChatGPT is for all languages, but obviously I'm going to orientate myself towards that one. So I'm going to show you very, very quickly how this works. You need to be in two different browsers for some reason. So I've got here, I'm on Edge, and I am on Microsoft Word here on the other side. with Google Chrome. What I want to do is just want first of all to be getting on Microsoft Online. It's got to be Word Online. Then I have the transcribe possibility here. I'm going to click on this and I'm going to change the language very quickly onto French. And I'm going to record my my video. I'm going to be recording the sound of the other side and just do that very quickly to show how this works. But obviously I'm not going to get a whole transcript. So let's play, let's listen to this. And I'll start recording.
En 1622, Paris est une ville sombre. Les rues sont étroites et surtout... Ah malodorante.
Okay, now I've got my transcript, obviously just a flavor of the things that you do. I'm going to add to the document. I stopped it and just the text in this case. And I just got just little things here, okay, just tiny amount. And that's done nice and easy. And I will have a longer transcript. So now I'm going to ask ChatGPT. I've got my text to be creating some questions in English or in French, but in this time it's going to be in English for comprehension. So create, and I'll paste my text. Ask away, and you will see that it's going to be generating great amount of questions very quickly, and you can work on a comprehension exercise straight away. Again, you can change it in French if you wanted to, but I think as a starter maybe it's not a bad idea to be working and having your questions in English to see what people understand. It's always a good idea also to have a higher comprehensible input where people understand most of the text from a starter. Okay, I'm going to ask ChatGPT to create a kind of gap fill exercise with 10 verbs that will have picked up from the text. You can see it's quite quick in getting things. It's not exactly right. Être désigné. Actually, maybe it is actually fine. Your numbers next to it, very well organized. Okay, I've got 10 there. I'm going to ask him to generate the response, the answers. Can you give answers on this? Okay, that's pretty impressive. Again, been managed to be getting your answers there for you and for them maybe to sort out and to work out. Maybe, well, obviously without the text that'd be quite useful. Otherwise, you just have to pick it from there. Finally, I'm going to add to a cultural element by asking some cultural questions based on the paragraph. So hopefully it's going to fit. And obviously, this is in these in the target language if you wanted to, but I think again it's very good and you can base lots of research and lots of interesting things on the cultural element, on the theatre here in the 17th century and things like that. So another well done, well played to ChatGPT for generating all that stuff.
There we are. Apologies for trying to multitask and getting a few things wrong there, but these things can happen when one presents live. So the last video for today is from Steve Morgan, who again, like Julia, has been sharing lots of ideas around ChatGPT. So I'm really delighted to show Steve's video right now. And he's going to be talking about things like grabbing text from images and putting them into ChatGPT. So over to Steve.
So it's great to be a part of this webinar. Thank you very much for including me. We have a lot of text resources. Sometimes they are printouts, sometimes they are hard copies, sometimes they are scans. And one of the things that you can do with a text resource, particularly in Microsoft OneNote, is extract the text. And so this is a bit of an app smash where you can use that feature alongside another app, online app, to produce listening resources, which are always difficult to get at the exact level that we want them for our students. So assuming you are using Microsoft OneNote, and I know a lot of you are converts already, then you may well have a scan of a page or a printout of a document such as the one you can see here on immigration for A-level Spanish. So the first step you're going to take is right-click on an image and select copy text from picture. So it's going to do a pretty good job at optical character recognition and pull out the text, and then you just paste it on the page. Now you will see that it's formatted a bit weirdly, and actually there's a few spelling mistakes because it hasn't recognized certain spellings. So the first use of ChatGPT here would be to paste it into ChatGPT, and you can see my instruction to correct any spelling mistakes and remove unnecessary gaps, which it does, and you can see the version here. So now you have obviously quickly check it again and make any corrections, but you now have a good working text which was pulled out of a picture. At this point, I've reminded myself you can also ask ChatGPT to reword it so it's suitable for a particular exam grade or level, and that would be ideal if you just got it out of a magazine or off a website. So there you can do that. You can see that, what's happened there. Okay, step 3 would be pretty much like other people have shown you this evening, to create one or more comprehension tasks based on the text, even though it's going to be listening. So in this case, I've said generate 6 MC questions, multiple choice questions about the text in Spanish. Important tip here is if you tell it to provide a separate answer list underneath, then it doesn't give the answers straight away after each question, it lists them separately. So that's just handy as a teacher. Okay, step 4, you are going to go to this website fromtexttospeech.com and you paste in the output that ChatGPT came up with for you. You can choose the language, in this case Spanish, you can choose the voice, and you can choose the speed at which it's going to be spoken. The little tip up here is that the student can also use this, once you show them how to do it, to help them practice their own listening. They could take a news story, for example, of the week on the topic you've been studying, turn it into a listening, get ChatGPT to ask them some questions, and even grade their answers. So there's another level. So once you've pasted in your text, click Create Audio File, and you've got this option. The first thing is, do you want to run it as a teacher-led activity in class? If so, you just press play, and then the 3 dots over on the right, you can also alter the speed. More likely though, you're going to right click on download audio file, save it as something, put it into OneNote or wherever, and you then have your listening activity. So that was a quick look at how you can extract text from images or printouts, formulate the text any way you wish, create tasks, and then the final step is to turn that text into listening. So I hope you've enjoyed that. Do connect with me on Twitter at Steve Singapore.
Great stuff. As always, Steve, thank you so much for sharing your presentation. I'm going to stop sharing the screen right now, and you'll be pleased to hear we have 2 live sessions now. One from Caroline and Aubrey, and then the last one from Claudia, all of whom are coming from the United States of America live right now. So I'm so pleased to see Caroline on screen. Is Aubrey with us? Can Aubrey turn on her video maybe? And if people haven't seen Caroline and Aubrey before, they did do a Tilt webinar for us a couple of weeks ago around how you can use authentic text for teaching grammar. And the recording of that is on my YouTube channel, where this recording will be as well a bit later on. So Caroline, do you want to share your screen? Is Aubrey with us?
She is, but she noted in the chat that she isn't allowed to share her image.
Okay, that's fine. So if you want to speak for the next sort of 5 minutes so presumably Aubrey can turn her microphone on, is that right?
Yes, I don't know. Are you allowed to give her permission to turn her camera on?
Yeah, so Helen's can make people co-host. So Helen, if you could make Aubrey co-host, she'll be able to share her screen and speak and what have you. That would be great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, can you see me now?
Yep, we can. Over to you, ladies. Great to see you both again.
Good to see you too.
Awesome. Great to see you too.
Okay, well, hello. We are Aubrey and Caroline, collectively known as Acquisition, and we are here to show you how to use ChatGPT and direct web sources to curate scaffolded learning experiences for your students. Okay, and we feel like this is important to announce. No, ChatGPT is not going to replace the teacher, and we don't use it to cheat or to be lazy. We use it to deliver compelling lessons in the target language based on authentic resources, but with the scaffolds that make those sources right and comprehensible for students.
Absolutely. And that can take a lot of time to do on our own, right? So we know that figuring out how to achieve a work-life balance as a teacher is a humongous challenge. So let's make this a lesson on making it easier for us, right?
Okay, so as with most fun things in life, you must use ChatGPT responsibly. So here are a few important reminders that we'd like to put out there before diving into one of the top ways that we use it. So first, remember that you know your students best. Personal connections and relationships are irreplaceable and irreplicable. So always keep your kids in mind. You know what's right for them.
Absolutely. And second, ChatGPT is not always accurate, as we've heard from many presentations, or representative of what you want your students to learn. So if something seems off, maybe it is. So fact checking can be necessary.
And then third, you are still the expert. You have the degree, experience, and feedback. You are the intelligence, simply delegating tasks to the artificial intelligence.
All right, so if you followed us on social media or attended any of our professional learning opportunities that we offer, then you are familiar with our learning cycle. ChatGPT is becoming pretty familiar with it as well. And another piece that we are very passionate about is ACTFL's core practices. And ACTFL is like the ALL in the United States. So we use these core practices to ensure we're creating a classroom that's proficiency-based and culture-minded and uses best practices for language learning.
Okay, so into the task. Step one, find your authentic resource. Today, we're going to show you an example with an online text resource, like a news article. And then step two, after you find it, just simply copy the URL address.
Super easy, right? So you found this great authentic resource, and now we want to copy that URL, and we're going to use backward design, right? We always want to begin with the end in mind. The first question we asked ChatGPT was to create 3 cultural comparison questions using our source. We want our kids to be able to use their presentational speaking skills and discuss similarities and differences of the celebration of Carnaval. And we've put it in English here so that everyone could understand.
Okay, then we create the scaffolds. There you go. So here we asked ChatGPT to pull 15 key vocabulary words. Having these words will increase the comprehensibility and also be tools for the students to converse about the subject later on. So ChatGPT gave us both the vocabulary and the definition here.
Yeah. And then we had to create a table so that we could guide our students, right? You can back the definitions out of that table and then paste them below the table, and you can have students negotiate meaning and use the article that you've given them to read as context clues, and then students can pair those definitions with the words that they see.
And next, we wanted to check student understanding of the terms. So we asked ChatGPT to create a fill-in-the-blank activity. And as a bonus, sometimes ChatGPT is so generous that it automatically makes the answer key without even being prompted.
We love that, right? So before we have students complete their presentational speaking, right, we had those 3 cultural comparison questions. We want to make sure that our scaffolds have actually worked for them and help them understand the content. So we asked ChatGPT to create multiple choice style comprehension questions for our kids. And then, as Aubrey mentioned, that sometimes it's generous and nice and creates the answer key for us, but if it doesn't, all you have to do is say, create an answer key.
Ask or demand and you'll get it done.
Yeah, absolutely. All you have to do is ask. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon and letting us come into your houses in the evening. We're going to throw our Twitter handles in the chat.
Thank you.
That was amazing, beautifully succinct, and you worked so well together. So thank you so much again. Lovely to see you again, Caroline and Aubrey. Great stuff. Wonderful. Okay, so the last session, I know that it's been a bit of a marathon, but I'm sure everyone's finding it incredibly useful. And those people watching the replay, I'm sure you're going to be making lots and lots and lots and lots of notes. So without further ado, we're going to finish with Claudia Elliott, who I saw doing an amazing ChatGPT presentation or discussion, shall I say, with Meredith White, also from the States. So I can't wait to hear from you right now, Claudia. If you could turn on your camera, I think you should be co-host, so you'll be able to share your screen and turn on your audio as well. There we are.
Thank you.
Great to meet you, Claudia. Great to meet you.
Joe, thank you for inviting me. Hello, everybody. This has been a marathon, so I know that everybody, you should get a reward for staying here so long. You are like champions. So my name is Claudia Elliott. I teach Spanish in Jacksonville, Florida. And I teach, how I teach my class is doing a lot of comprehensible input and really working with using my language instead of teaching the language. So every time that I find a resource where I can really create content and language that is compelling and comprehensible for my students, that's what it is. And I think you have heard everything about ChatGPT in terms of it's a resource, it's a tool, it's kind of like the heavy lift for you to be creative. So I love to use ChatGPT to create different type of stories for my class. And what I want to do is to be focused on language that is frequent for my students. Why? Because not a language has the same, efficiency with my students when they're coming about acquiring the language. So I want to focus in the 7 superverbs where I'm talking about to be
Oh, you're still muted. I don't know if someone, I hope nobody's muting you on purpose. Could you unmute us? There we are. That should be fine now.
Okay. So what I try to do is come to ChatGPT and give instructions. So I think you have heard a lot about instructions and how we need to be very specific. The part that I really like is that it's responsive ChatGPT. So whenever you send an instruction, it responds to you. I am a Spanish speaker. English is my second language. So that's one of the best things that I have found is that I can give my instructions in my first language, which is Spanish. So this is a story that I asked my ChatGPT to create. And in the story, I'm asking them to use for Spanish 1 with a lot of frequency and a high level of repetition. And then ChatGPT gave me this story. I want to have like 2 characters. I have to have a problem and I have to have a solution. But when I read this, I noticed, oh, that's going to be a little bit hard for my level 1 students. So I come here and I say, let's do these verbs specifically. I need you to repeat it these many times. And I want you to use only present tense and use it in the 3rd singular form and the 3rd plural form. And then it brings it. So something that I like to have with my students is visuals. So my students love to have visuals with the stories. So then I ask, let's add emojis to the text. So you can have them to create your test with adding emojis, and you can be specific about what emojis you want them to add, or let ChatGPT have fun and incorporate emojis. And after they do that, what I want to do is let's give me all the emojis and then give me all the vocab list, but with emojis. And I really like how the possibilities of doing this. After you do that, you can create, true or false statements. You can create all the different activities that you have already seen. Now, something that I like to do is to change perspective. So this was from the perspective of Max, which is the dog, and wanted to be really friends with Luna, which is the cat. But now I can write a different version of the same story, and I say, write the story from the perspective of Luna, the cat, who is very popular, but she also feels lonely. So now you have the same story from two different perspectives. And then, and I know you have been here for a long time, so I want to keep it really short. Then you can create these two stories and add a dialogue between the two characters. So as you can see, it's like endless, the possibilities. After you do that, something that I like to do is, okay, now let's write about my lesson plan. So I look at these two stories. I want my students to read the story, understand the story, find similarities between Luna and Max, that they're supposed to be super different, but now they're really similar, and then identify themselves either with Luna and Max. So we're using a ton of language. We're using a ton of comprehensible language. We use frequent language, and it's connecting with my students. We're using the language so they acquire the language. I'm not focusing on teaching the language. But after that, I can say, create a lesson plan in English with these objectives. Understand main idea and important details of the stories. I love about GPT that it just doesn't matter if I make spelling errors. It just really, it's gonna just read through those. So it's like, oh, it's perfect. An important details, compare both stories and compare yourself with one of the characters. Then it gives me, and again, like everybody has said it here, this is not to replace you. You are the professional. You know what you need to do. You know how to like go there and make the adjustments. This is the first step. But when you have all these already, I mean, your creativity and your time is back. So this is what I have to show for you. I know I have 5 minutes and you have been here for so long time. So this is it. My name is Claudia Elliott, and if you want to just chat with me, I'm at Claudia M. Elliott in Twitter, and then I also have a podcast that is called Growing with Proficiency, the podcast, and you can listen in Apple or Spotify. Thank you, Joe.
You're absolutely welcome. I put your podcast in the chat as well. So I'm sure lots of people will be listening to you, and I'm sure we would love you to come back as well and do a whole hour. Thank you so much for finding 5 minutes of your time during the day to do this. We really, really appreciate it. Wow.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're absolutely welcome. What an amazing, I mean, I've certainly learned a lot about multitasking. I apologize for having little messages coming up on the screen, but I was trying to do everything on my 2 screens and reply to people on Facebook and various other places. And anyway, it's all good. And we've really, really given a huge introduction, I think, to how you can use ChatGPT in the languages classroom to save time, produce results, and do the heavy lifting of producing your own resources, I think, which is one of the big takeaways that I've taken away. And we've already decided, haven't we, Helen, that we want to come back and do another session on the 28th.
Yes, I've spoken about it with Julia, because Julia obviously had prepared an awful lot of things, which I think it would be nice to give her time to be able to do that without feeling that she's under any sort of pressure. So certainly for next Tuesday at 8 o'clock, Julia will be completing that. And what we'll do is then we will share all of her resources after she's had chance to explain it all, rather than just leaving it to everybody to go through. So I think that's our initial idea, is that we'll find out from Julia how much time that she needs for that. And then we can definitely include other people on future occasions as well. This is something that's going to run and run, isn't it? And I just noticed that, Julia, you said thank you to Steve for his prompt. So something I'd put would be fantastic to have some sort of list where we've all put the prompts in, because there was so, yeah, it's fine to have repetition because it's showing that people are discovering things. But in a way, having done that and having discovered it, wouldn't it be nice to have something where we've got a quick guide as to how to do a dialogue quickly without any mistakes or whatever it is. But Julia, you've joined us. Would you like to say a few words?
Well, just, I mean, maybe Steve wants to say something, but he has already shared online a Google Doc where people were adding their prompts. So
I think that was me actually, Julia, but I may be
Was
right. I did that as well. But yeah, I mean, I think having a central place for showing all the prompts would be a great idea.
Yeah, that would be good. So I was hoping actually to be able to just give people a link to say, there you are, you can sign up for the next one. I won't go into my problems, but at the moment I can't get into my own Eventbrite account. However, I'm sure there's a chat bot here talking to me in a very sensible way, taking me through what I've got to do, and I've got to take some cookies away or something. But can I just say, really, thank you so much to Julia for kicking all of this off, to all of the people who contributed. Lovely to have live and video, and as always, we love it when we have people from different countries as well coming along to join in, because in the end we are doing the same thing, aren't we? So and I can see lots of comments here to everybody, and yes, from Sandra. Esmeralda is here, and I think we just, let's face it, we're keenies and we just enjoy playing with this, don't we? So yeah, we'll never be out without a job, but also this is just fun, just for yourself, just learning things, isn't it? I've certainly really enjoyed it. So,
and the chat has been incredibly rich as well. So I'd really recommend. Well, we're going to put the chat, aren't we, on a web page, I presume.
Yes. So what we'll do is I've made the recording in Zoom. When that's all been processed, I give it to Joe, who then puts it on his website. If you, Joe, on your YouTube channel could have I'll give you the link to the AWL website, and then you've got it all together. So then you'll have the video, there's the website, which will keep anything, and any of the speakers who've done anything which you want to, if you want to give links to me so that I can put that from that page. I've got a feeling we'll do a bit like we did with the Microsoft project, in that we can just have a web page that's dedicated to ChatGPT, which we can then add to. I always have to hesitate on the GPT. Now, Vincent did say that we at no point said what it meant, GPT, but we can put all of that in
generative,
pre-trained
transformer.
Yeah, I looked it up and I can't remember, but I know. Anyway, so it's 10:05. I think you've done really well, Joe, on coordinating everybody for the show and tell as well. Thank you. Really, really good. Right. You multitasked brilliantly. And I like Joe's comment about only 2 screens.
Well, I needed them tonight, I must say. My head is buzzing now. But so everyone will get the recording tomorrow, and then it might take a wee while to put together the web page, because there's so much content we need to add to that. But the recording will be there probably first thing tomorrow morning. Thank you ever so much for everyone who's contributed, who's come along, who's shared really rich ideas in the chat. This is just the first of a few webinars on ChatGPT, so let's just all share and see how we can get the most out of this really fantastic tools. Yes, it has some drawbacks, but I think it's a very, very positive thing we can use in the classroom.
Thank you ever so much. I'm going to stop the recording now, shall I?